The ballroom was alive with music, lights, and laughter. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, and the sound of clinking glasses filled the air. Every corner of the grand hall spoke of wealth, polished marble floors, gold-framed mirrors, and expensive perfumes floating in the atmosphere. It was the birthday party of Alexander Grant, one of the city's youngest millionaires. He was tall, handsome, and carried himself with the confidence of someone who never heard the word no. Everyone smiled at him, but Alexander knew the truth. Most of these people weren't his friends, they were here because of his money, his power, his name. Still, he played along, greeting guests with polite charm. On his arm was his fiancée, Vanessa. She was beautiful in every sense, long dark hair, a flawless smile, and a dress that cost more than most people's yearly salary. Everyone called them the perfect couple. But Alexander sometimes wondered if perfection was just a mask. As the music grew louder, waiters and waitresses moved around with silver trays, offering wine and champagne. Among them was a girl who didn't fit the glittering world around her. She was young, maybe 20, her uniform clean but plain, her shoes slightly worn. Her skin was dark, her eyes sharp and watchful, and though she carried herself with quiet dignity, it was clear she came from another world, one far from marble floors and chandeliers. Her name was Amara, though no one at the party cared to ask. To most guests, she was invisible. But not tonight. Alexander stood near the stage, Vanessa by his side, when Amara approached with a tray. On it were 2 crystal glasses filled with a golden drink. Her hands trembled slightly as she offered them. Alexander reached for one, but in that moment, something unexpected happened. Amara's eyes locked onto his, and he felt a strange intensity in her gaze. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something but was afraid. For a second, he almost looked away, but then he saw her mouth move. Barely a whisper. Barely sound at all. "Don't drink this." Alexander froze. He looked at her, uncertain if he had heard right. The party noises swirled around him, music, chatter, Vanessa's soft laugh, but Amara's words cut through it all like a blade. Her eyes widened with urgency. She leaned ever so slightly forward and whispered again, this time clearer. "Please. Don't drink it." For a man who had faced hostile business rivals, ruthless negotiations, and backstabbing partners, Alexander had never felt such a sudden chill crawl through him. His fingers hovered over the glass. Why would she say that? Why here, in front of everyone? "Darling, take it," Vanessa said sweetly, pressing his arm. Her voice was warm, but her eyes flickered with expectation. The tray shook in Amara's hands. Alexander noticed how tightly she clutched it, as if the weight of those 2 glasses was unbearable. He looked from her to Vanessa and back again. Was it a joke? A mistake? Or something much darker? Alexander forced a smile, masking his confusion. "Thank you," he said politely, but instead of drinking, he lowered the glass. He set it on the table nearby. Vanessa tilted her head, her smile not fading but her eyes narrowing for just a fraction of a second. "Aren't you going to drink?" she asked. Later, Alexander replied casually. "Too many speeches tonight. I'll keep my head clear." She laughed softly, brushing it off, but Alexander caught the faintest tension in her jaw. Amara quickly moved away, disappearing into the crowd like a shadow. The night went on, but Alexander's mind wasn't in the music or the laughter anymore. Every glance, every toast, every word from Vanessa suddenly felt heavy with hidden meaning. His hand itched toward the untouched glass on the table, but each time he looked at it, Amara's whisper returned. "Don't drink this." Why had she said it? Did she know something he didn't? Or was she just a scared servant trying to stir trouble? Hours later, as the party slowed and guests began leaving, Alexander stood by the window overlooking the city. The skyline glittered with lights, but his mind was elsewhere. Vanessa had gone to greet someone at the door, leaving him momentarily alone. And then he saw her again. Amara stood near the corner, carrying an empty tray. Her eyes met his, and this time there was no mistake in her expression. Fear. Real fear. She gave the slightest shake of her head, as if begging him to understand. Alexander's heart pounded. He wanted to ask her, to demand answers, but the weight of silence pressed between them. One wrong word in front of the wrong person, and she could lose her job or worse. Before he could move, Vanessa returned, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked playfully. He smiled faintly. "Nothing. Just enjoying the view." But his mind wasn't on the view. It was on the poor girl's whisper. That night, when the mansion grew quiet and the last guest had left, Alexander lay awake in bed. Vanessa slept beside him, her breathing soft and steady. He stared at the ceiling, the echo of Amara's words refusing to leave. "Don't drink this." A simple warning. Or the beginning of something far more dangerous. He turned his head, watching Vanessa's peaceful face in the dim light. For the first time, a thought entered his mind that chilled him more than anything else. What if the warning wasn't about the drink alone? What if it was about the woman lying right beside him? The mansion was silent, but Alexander Grant could not find rest. The warning had burrowed into his mind like a splinter. He shifted in bed, his eyes fixed on the ceiling, while beside him Vanessa slept peacefully. Her hair spilled over the pillow like silk, her lips slightly parted, her hand resting lightly on his chest as if she had nothing to hide. But Alexander could not shake the voice. "Don't drink this." Why had the servant girl said that? Why risk her job, maybe her life, for a whisper? He had seen the terror in her eyes. That wasn't the look of someone joking. It was the look of someone who knew something dangerous. At dawn, Alexander finally gave up on sleep. He rose quietly, not wanting to wake Vanessa. In the mirror, his reflection stared back at him, tired eyes, hair slightly undone, but sharper somehow, harder. He was a man used to answers, used to control. Yet last night had left him with questions that gnawed at him. By breakfast, Vanessa was all light and laughter. She kissed him on the cheek, spoke about their upcoming wedding, and filled the room with charm. To anyone else, she would appear flawless. But to Alexander, every word now felt heavy. He watched her pour coffee, and a strange unease twisted inside him. Could it be true? Could she, his fiancée, the woman he trusted, want to harm him? The thought seemed impossible, and yet, the whisper wouldn't leave. After breakfast, Alexander slipped away to his private office. He closed the heavy oak door, sat at his desk, and opened his laptop. With a few keystrokes, he pulled up the guest list from last night. He searched for the staff hired for the event. His eyes scanned the names until one stood out, Amara Blake. 21. Temporary staff from an agency. Background details were thin, but one line caught his attention, local address in Southside District. Southside. A place of poverty, crime, and forgotten lives. A place Alexander had driven past in his luxury car but never entered. Why would a girl from there end up in his mansion, warning him of poison? The door to his office creaked, and Alexander quickly closed the file. Vanessa leaned against the frame, smiling. "Working already? You never stop, do you?" He forced a smile back. "Just emails." She walked closer, placing her hands on his shoulders from behind. "You need to relax. Everything is perfect. Our wedding is coming soon, and you're thinking about business." Perfect. The word stung him now. Perfection was often the best disguise. That evening, Alexander attended another meeting, but his focus was elsewhere. Every person who shook his hand, every toast offered, reminded him of the untouched glass from last night. He imagined what might have happened if he had taken a sip. Would he have collapsed on the floor, gasping for air, while Vanessa screamed and played the role of grieving bride-to-be? The image sent a chill through him. Days passed, but the doubt only grew. He began noticing small things about Vanessa that he had ignored before. The way she sometimes took late-night phone calls and walked into another room. The way her smile tightened whenever he asked too many questions. The way her eyes flickered when money or inheritance was mentioned. And Amara, where was she now? One night, unable to bear the silence of his doubts, Alexander left his mansion. He drove into the city, away from the glowing towers and into the darker streets of Southside. His expensive car looked out of place against the cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. Children stared as he passed, and men on corners eyed him with suspicion. He parked near a small block of rundown apartments. According to the file, Amara lived here. The walls were stained, the windows broken in places, and the smell of dampness lingered in the air. Alexander hesitated. A millionaire in such a place, he felt like an intruder. Finally, he climbed the stairs. On the third floor, he found her door. He knocked softly. For a moment, there was silence. Then the door opened just an inch. Amara's face appeared, her eyes widening when she saw him. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I need to talk to you," Alexander said firmly. "About what you told me." Her eyes darted around the hallway nervously. "Please, go. If they see you here." "Who?" he pressed. But before she could answer, footsteps echoed up the stairs. Heavy, rough. Amara panicked. She grabbed his arm and pulled him inside. The door shut quietly, locking out the noise. Inside, the apartment was small, barely furnished, but clean. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling. Alexander looked around and felt a sharp contrast between his mansion and her reality. Amara's voice trembled. "You don't understand. They're watching. If they know I warned you," she stopped, pressing her lips together. Alexander leaned closer. "Then tell me the truth. Why did you stop me from drinking? What's going on?" Her hands shook. For a moment, it seemed like she would speak, but then she shook her head. "Not here. Not now." The footsteps outside grew louder, passing the door and fading into the distance. Only then did she breathe again. "Go back," she whispered urgently. "Pretend you don't know me. Pretend nothing happened." Alexander frowned. "I can't. You put this doubt in my heart, and now I need answers." She looked at him with eyes full of fear and something else. Pity. "If you stay close to her, you won't survive." The words hit him like thunder. Before he could say more, she opened the door and pushed him toward the hallway. "Please. Leave. Don't come back here. For your own sake." Reluctantly, Alexander stepped out. As the door closed behind him, he stood alone in the dim hallway, her words echoing in his ears. "If you stay close to her, you won't survive." That night, back at his mansion, Alexander lay awake again. But this time, the doubt had grown into something sharper. Suspicion. Fear. Vanessa slept beside him, her hand resting gently on his chest once more. But instead of comfort, it felt like a weight pressing down. He turned his head, staring at her in the dark, wondering who she really was. And deep in his chest, he felt it, the beginning of a dangerous decision. He would find out the truth. Even if it destroyed him. The city looked different at night. Alexander Grant sat in the back of his sleek black car, the tinted windows reflecting flashes of neon signs and streetlights as the driver took him toward the riverfront. But tonight was not a business trip. Tonight was not pleasure. Tonight was something darker. Vanessa had told him she was meeting an old friend for dinner. She had smiled as she said it, kissed his cheek, and stepped into her car with elegance. But Alexander had caught the flicker in her eyes. He had learned to read people, partners, rivals, liars. That flicker was not dinner with a friend. It was something hidden. So he told his driver to follow. Quietly. No lights, no questions. The man was loyal and didn't ask why his employer was suddenly chasing his fiancée through the city. Vanessa's car moved away from the glowing towers of wealth and deeper into the silent industrial district. Here, the streets were darker, the buildings older, the air colder. Alexander felt unease tightening in his chest. Why would she come here? Her car stopped outside a warehouse. The paint was peeling, the windows boarded, but a faint glow leaked from inside. She stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement, her long coat wrapping around her. She looked like a stranger here, too perfect for a place that smelled of rust and smoke. Alexander ordered his driver to park a block away. "Wait here," he said firmly. Then he slipped into the shadows. He moved carefully, each step cautious. He was no spy, no detective, but desperation sharpened his senses. He found a broken wall and crouched behind it, peering through a crack. Inside the warehouse, Vanessa met two men. Their faces were rough, scarred, men who looked born in alleys rather than offices. She handed them a small envelope. One of them opened it, pulled out thick stacks of cash, and grinned. Alexander's stomach turned. He strained to hear, and though the voices were muffled, some words reached him. "Next time, double. He trusts me completely." The night of the wedding. Alexander's heart pounded. He wanted to storm in, demand answers, but instinct held him back. If he moved too soon, he might never learn the full truth. Then something else happened. Vanessa slipped off her ring, the one he had placed on her finger in front of hundreds of people, promising forever, and placed it in her pocket before continuing the conversation. Alexander felt his chest tighten, as though the air itself had turned heavy. The symbol of love, removed so easily. For what? For money? For betrayal? He turned away, unable to watch more. But as he did, he nearly stumbled into someone standing in the shadows. It was her. Amara. She looked different outside the mansion uniform, wearing a simple coat, her hair tied back, but her eyes were the same. Sharp. Afraid. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered urgently. Alexander grabbed her arm gently. "You knew," he hissed. "You knew she was meeting them." Amara's face hardened with sorrow. "I told you not to drink. I told you to stay away from her." "What is she doing?" he demanded. "Why is she giving them money? Who are they?" Amara shook her head. "If I tell you here, they'll kill us both." "Then when?" Alexander pressed, his voice low but intense. Amara's eyes darted toward the warehouse. "Soon. But you need to trust me. She is not who you think she is. You're in danger every second you stand beside her." Alexander wanted to scream, to force answers, but before he could, a loud metallic clang echoed from the warehouse. One of the men stepped outside to smoke. Amara pulled him deeper into the alley. "Go," she begged. "Leave now before they see you." He looked back at the warehouse, at Vanessa laughing with the men inside, then back at Amara's trembling face. Her words returned like a knife, "If you stay with her, you won't survive." Finally, Alexander pulled away and disappeared into the shadows, his mind a storm. He returned to his mansion later that night, Vanessa already home, already smiling, already pretending she had been with an old friend. She kissed him softly, her perfume sweet and poisonous at once. He smiled back, playing the role of a man in love, but his eyes were cold. Because now he knew. She was hiding something. And Amara, this poor girl from the forgotten streets, was the only one daring enough to warn him. As he lay in bed later, pretending to sleep, he thought about the warehouse, about the envelope of cash, about Vanessa slipping off her ring as if it meant nothing. His chest ached with betrayal, but beneath the ache was something sharper, determination. If Vanessa was playing a game, then so was he. But unlike her, he wasn't going to lose. Morning light filled the mansion, but for Alexander Grant, the world had turned darker than ever. He sat at the breakfast table, sipping coffee that tasted like ash, while Vanessa hummed cheerfully across from him. She looked perfect, as always, her dress elegant, her smile flawless, but Alexander could no longer see her the same way. Every word she spoke felt like a lie. Every laugh sounded hollow. He had seen her in the warehouse, handing cash to strangers, removing her engagement ring like it meant nothing. And yet here she sat, smiling as if she were the most loyal woman alive. "Darling," Vanessa said sweetly, "don't forget the charity gala tonight. Everyone will be there. We'll have to look our best." Alexander nodded absently, hiding the storm inside him. "Of course." She leaned over, kissed his cheek, and walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor. When the door closed, Alexander finally let his mask drop. His jaw tightened. His chest burned. He needed answers. And he knew where to find them. That evening, Alexander didn't attend the charity gala. Instead, he drove again into Southside, the broken part of the city where Amara lived. The streets were even colder this time, but he didn't care. He knocked at her door, and after a long silence, she opened it. Her eyes widened in shock. "You came back?" "Yes," he said firmly. "And this time, I won't leave without the truth." Amara looked around nervously, then pulled him inside. She locked the door and drew the curtains. The room was dim, and the silence heavy. Alexander faced her, his voice low but unshaken. "I followed her. I saw her at the warehouse. I saw her giving them money." "Who are they, Amara? What is she hiding from me?" Amara's shoulders slumped, as if she had been carrying a weight for too long. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "They are not just strangers," she said. "They are killers. They work for a group that hunts people like me, and people like you." Alexander frowned. "Like me?" She nodded. "Rich men. Powerful men. Men with fortunes to steal. Your fiancé is working with them." "You were never her love, you were her target." Her words cut through him like a blade. Alexander shook his head, refusing at first to believe it. "No, you're saying she wants me dead? Why? She already has everything. She has me." Amara's eyes filled with sorrow. "She doesn't want you. She wants what you leave behind. Your wealth. Your empire. And she's not working alone. The group plans everything carefully, they use women like her to get close, to marry, to inherit. And when the man is gone, the fortune belongs to them." The room spun around Alexander. His stomach tightened. He thought of the drink, the warning, the warehouse. It all made sense now. "She was going to poison me," he whispered. Amara nodded. "Yes. My brother, he was one of their victims. That's how I know. He trusted the wrong woman, just like you. And when he was gone, I found out too late who she truly served. That's why I warned you. I couldn't watch another man walk into the same trap." Alexander turned away, pressing a hand to his face. His chest ached, his breath shallow. Betrayal was one thing, but betrayal by the woman he was ready to marry, the woman he thought he loved, that was something else entirely. After a long silence, he turned back to Amara. His eyes burned with pain, but also with anger. "Why tell me all this? Why risk yourself?" Amara's voice broke. "Because I couldn't save my brother. I couldn't stop them. But maybe I can save you." Alexander stared at her, and for the first time, he saw more than just a servant girl. He saw courage. He saw someone who had lost everything, yet still risked her life to warn a stranger. But before he could speak, a sharp sound came from outside. A car door slamming. Heavy footsteps on the stairs. Amara's face turned pale. "They found you," she whispered. Alexander's heart raced. He reached for her hand. "We need to get out." But before they could move, there was a knock at the door. A slow, heavy knock that echoed through the small apartment. Amara's eyes filled with terror. She mouthed silently, "Don't answer." The knock came again, louder this time. Alexander moved toward the window, pulling the curtain just slightly. He froze. Two of the same men he had seen at the warehouse were standing outside, their eyes cold, their posture threatening. Amara gripped his arm. "Now you understand," she whispered. "This is the world she brought into your life. And it won't stop until she has what she wants." The knock turned into pounding fists against the door. Alexander's heart thundered. In that moment, he realized two things. First, Amara had been telling the truth. His fiancée was not just a liar, she was part of something deadly. And second, his life was hanging by a thread. Back at the mansion that night, Vanessa poured herself a glass of wine. She smiled as she scrolled through her phone, sending a message to someone unnamed. Everything is going according to plan. The mansion glittered with light that night, but Alexander Grant saw only shadows. Dozens of candles lined the long dining table, the smell of roasted meat and fine wine filling the air. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. Vanessa had spent the whole day preparing for this special dinner, insisting it was a private celebration for just the two of them. She had smiled when she said it. That same flawless smile that once melted his heart, but now cut through him like glass. Alexander sat at the head of the table, his expression calm. His fiancée sat across from him, her beauty glowing in the candlelight. She lifted the wine bottle, her voice smooth and soft. "Darling, you've been so tense lately. Tonight, just relax. Let's enjoy this moment together." Her words flowed like honey, but Alexander's heart stayed cold. He remembered the warehouse, the cash, the ring she had slipped off without hesitation. He remembered Amara's voice, "If you stay close to her, you won't survive." Vanessa poured the wine slowly, her eyes watching him closely. The red liquid swirled into the crystal glasses, catching the candlelight like blood. She pushed one glass toward him, the other toward herself. "To us," she whispered. Alexander raised his glass, his fingers steady despite the storm inside him. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "To us." But as the glasses touched, something small and sharp passed between them, an invisible tension. He saw it in her eyes. The flicker. The hunger. The expectation. She wanted him to drink first. Alexander leaned back slightly, still holding the glass. He twirled it gently, pretending to admire the way the liquid caught the light. Then, with a smooth movement, he set it down near his plate and reached for the food instead. "Smells incredible," he said casually, cutting into the steak. Vanessa's smile tightened just a little. "You're not going to drink?" Later, Alexander said, chewing slowly. "I want to enjoy the meal first." Her eyes flashed, just for a second, but she laughed it off. "Of course. Take your time." But Alexander wasn't done. As she turned to cut her own food, he moved quickly, sliding the glasses closer. With a subtle flick, he switched them. Now the glass she thought was his sat near her plate. When she looked back, everything was in place. She lifted her glass, still watching him. "Just one sip, darling." "For me." Alexander nodded. "Together." And this time, he raised his glass, but it was hers. They drank. The liquid burned down his throat, rich and bitter. He set the glass down slowly, watching her. She smiled, satisfied, then sipped from the other glass, his glass, the safe one. For a moment, everything seemed normal. They ate, they talked lightly, though Alexander barely heard her words. His eyes stayed fixed on her. Waiting. Watching. Then it began. At first, just a twitch in her hand as she reached for the fork. Then her smile faltered. She touched her throat, her breath catching. "Alexander," her voice cracked. He leaned forward slightly, his expression calm, though inside his heart thundered. "Yes, darling?" Her eyes widened, panic flooding her face. She coughed, then gasped, clutching at her chest. The fork clattered against the plate. She struggled for air, her perfect mask crumbling before his eyes. "You," she choked, her voice rasping. "You switched it." Alexander's jaw tightened. "And you poisoned it." Her body trembled, her skin paling. She slammed her fist against the table, knocking over the candle. The wax spilled, flames flickering dangerously, but Alexander didn't move. He just watched. "You'll regret this," she hissed, her voice breaking as she collapsed against the chair. "You don't know the truth." Her eyes rolled back, her body shaking, and then she slumped forward across the table. The candlelight flickered against her lifeless face. Silence filled the mansion. Alexander sat back, his chest heavy. He had won, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like betrayal carved into his soul. The woman he had planned to marry, the woman he had once trusted more than anyone, had tried to kill him. And in stopping her, he had destroyed everything they once were. Slowly, he stood and walked to the window. The night outside was quiet, the city lights glowing in the distance. But inside, his world had been shattered. Behind him, the body of Vanessa lay still at the table, surrounded by the feast she had prepared as a trap. Alexander closed his eyes, Amara's voice echoing once more in his mind. "If you stay close to her, you won't survive." He had survived. But survival came at a cost. And somehow, deep in his heart, he knew this wasn't the end. Because Vanessa's final words haunted him. "You don't know the truth." The mansion was silent except for the faint crackle of candles burning low. Alexander Grant stood by the window, staring into the night as the body of his fiancée lay across the dining table. The poisoned wineglass glimmered under the golden light, a cruel reminder of what had just happened. He should have felt relief. He had survived. The trap had failed. Yet instead, his chest was heavy, his thoughts circling Vanessa's last broken words. "You don't know the truth." What truth? What had she meant? The question haunted him even as sirens cut through the quiet streets. Blue and red lights flashed across the windows. Police officers filled the mansion minutes later, their boots echoing against the marble floor. They found Vanessa's lifeless body, the poisoned wine, the untouched feast. One officer looked at Alexander sharply. "Mr. Grant, you'll need to explain this." Alexander's voice was calm but cold. "She tried to kill me. She was working with others, men I've seen her meet. Check the warehouse near the river." The officers exchanged glances. One of them made a note. Another quietly bagged the wineglass. Alexander gave them the recordings from his hidden phone, the evidence he had gathered of her secret meetings. They listened, their faces hardening. "We'll investigate," the lead officer said. "But you need to understand, this doesn't end with her." Alexander nodded slowly. He already knew. 2 days later, the truth began to surface. The police uncovered files, accounts, and messages. Vanessa had been part of a larger operation, a network that preyed on powerful men. They used charm, beauty, and promises of love to get close. And when the moment came, the men vanished dead, and their fortunes transferred into carefully hidden accounts. The evidence was undeniable. Vanessa had been planning the same for him. But even with her gone, the danger wasn't over. The group still existed. And they would not forgive the man who had escaped their trap. Alexander's thoughts kept returning to Amara. Without her warning, he would have been another name on the list. Another man who died too young, remembered only for his wealth. He owed her more than thanks, he owed her his life. So one evening, he drove again to Southside. The streets were wet from rain, neon lights reflecting in puddles. He parked near the same rundown building and climbed the stairs to her door. When she opened it, her eyes widened in surprise. "You came back again?" "Yes," Alexander said softly. "And this time?" "I came to thank you." Amara shook her head. "You don't need to. I only did what I wished someone had done for my brother." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The small apartment smelled faintly of tea, the furniture simple but clean. He looked around, realizing how far her world was from his, and yet how much more honest it felt. "You risked everything," he said quietly. "And I need you to know. I believe you. About all of it." For the first time, Amara's expression softened. Her eyes shimmered, though she tried to hide it. "Most men like you, they don't listen to girls like me. They think we don't matter." Alexander's throat tightened. He had lived his whole life surrounded by wealth, but in this tiny apartment he felt something he had never felt before. Truth. "Without you," he said, "I'd be dead." She lowered her gaze. "Without your strength, you'd still be trapped. You chose to listen. That's what saved you." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Two very different lives, bound together by one terrible secret. Weeks passed. Investigations grew deeper. The police arrested some of the men from the warehouse, but many escaped. The network was larger than anyone realized. And Alexander knew they would return for him one day. But he was not afraid anymore. Not because of his wealth. Not because of his power. But because he had learned something far more valuable, that survival was not found in marble mansions or golden rings. It was found in truth, in people who cared without wanting anything in return. One evening, as he stood on the balcony of his mansion, the city lights spread before him, he thought about the future. He could rebuild, restart, surround himself again with glittering lies. But he didn't want that. His mind kept returning to the poor girl who had whispered a warning in a crowded ballroom, risking her life for a man she barely knew. Amara had nothing to offer him except honesty. And that was everything he truly needed. The final twist of Vanessa's words still haunted him sometimes. You don't know the truth. Maybe she meant the network. Maybe she meant something darker, something still hidden. But Alexander no longer cared. He would face whatever came. He was no longer blind. The night air was cool as he left the balcony and picked up his phone. His hand hesitated for only a moment before he dialed the number he had memorized. When Amara answered, her voice was soft, tired. Hello? It's me, Alexander said. There was a pause. Then a quiet laugh, small but real. I thought you'd forgotten me. Never, he whispered. For the first time in weeks, Alexander felt peace. Not because the danger was over, but because he was no longer alone in facing it. The millionaire had lost his fiancée. He had uncovered betrayal, survived poison, and faced death itself. But in the end, he found something greater than wealth. He found the truth. And in that truth, he found the only person who had truly cared if he lived or died.